secure passports in order to register to vote. I would very much like to yield a minute to my friend, the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Ramirez.
The gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to oppose the SAVE Act. Bottom line, the SAVE Act suppresses the votes of women, of Black, brown, and indigenous people, of veterans, and working class Americans. In advancing it, Republicans invoke those historical policies that were intended to disenfranchise Americans. Let me remind you what they were. Literacy tests and poll taxes for eligible voters, grandfather clauses which tied voters' right to their grandfathers before the Civil War, all-white primaries to eliminate Black voters' presence in the electoral process, and now the show me your papers. The SAVE Act is the same trash, just a different day. It is the Republicans' latest attempt to make clear who they believe should have access to vote and who they think should not. Anyone who votes for this bill will go down in the history books with the likes of Confederate politicians, Jim Crow advocates, and white supremacists as bigots. I urge my colleagues to vote no. With that, I yield back.
The gentlewoman from Illinois yields her time. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the representative from Florida, Ms. Kamek, to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in strong support. As a woman and as the chairwoman of the Republican Women's Caucus, not only just for election integrity, but clearly literacy, because y'all have not read the bill. That much is clear. This bill is very, very simple. It ensures that only American citizens can vote in our federal elections. This isn't hard. 87% of Americans agree that only Americans should vote in our elections. So it makes me wonder, why are my friends on the other side of the aisle always consistently looking for ways to ensure that illegals can vote in our elections? It's almost as though they have an ulterior motive. You have to show an ID to board a plane, to buy alcohol, to cash a check. You have to show an ID to buy cold medicine, for God's sakes. Why should people not have to verify their citizenship to register? And I say to register because my friend over here keeps pointing out that women in every single congressional district will have to provide proof of their name change in order to vote. Folks, read the bill, page 14. If you are registering to vote, there is a process by which the states establish. If you are already registered to vote, you are fine. Read the bill. Stop insulting women. I am sick and tired, and I know women across this country are sick and tired of being talked down to and being insulted repeatedly with the fear-mongering tactics of the left. It is disingenuous for them to stand there and continue to say that women will not be eligible to vote. This is about protecting one of our most sacred rights that we have as Americans. And I am so proud to stand here as a woman, as a married woman, and again, as the chair of the Republican Women's Caucus, in safeguarding and ensuring the integrity of our elections. I urge my colleagues to do the same.
Time has expired.
I yield an additional 15 seconds.
The gentleman from Wisconsin yields her an additional 15 seconds. Thank you.
I can keep preaching for an additional 30. The point is that Americans around this country are sick and tired of the fear-mongering tactics that they have been subjected to by the left for decades. We need to ensure the integrity of our elections. It has been demanded by the American people, and we're making good on that promise today. I urge my colleagues to support the SAVE Act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Expired. Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves this time. Gentleman from New York.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think my colleagues doth protest too much. I've read the bill many times, debated the bill. There's nothing in the bill that allows you to bring a marriage license to prove who you are when you register to vote. You will have to do all the things we suggest you will have to do, and that's exactly the problem. And I'd like to also just remind my colleague and friend from Florida that in Ms. Kamek's district, an estimated 170,000 women in her congressional district have a different name on their birth certificate than on their current photo ID, and that roughly 1,000 residents of Florida's 3rd Congressional District lack a passport. The cost to those individuals, $53.1 million to secure passports. With that, my dear friend, a member of our committee and the ranking member of the subcommittee on elections of House Administration, the distinguished gentlelady from Alabama, Ms. Sewell, I'd like to yield her 2 minutes.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to the House Republican so-called SAVE Act, the most restrictive voting law to be considered by this body in decades. The SAVE Act is just the latest in the ongoing assault on our democracy by President Trump and his allies in Congress. Instead of working to meet the needs of American people, House Republicans are busy spreading fear and lies to justify their attempts to disenfranchise millions of eligible voters. Let's be clear. It is already against the law for non-Americans to vote. This bill is a solution in search of a problem. The SAVE Act would create new barriers to the ballot box for millions of eligible voters. That includes almost 70 million American women who got married and changed their last name. It also includes 140 million Americans without a passport, and it includes Americans with military and tribal IDs. To be clear, this bill is not about protecting our elections. It's about making it harder for Americans to vote and easier for Republicans to win. As elected officials, we should be working to expand access to the ballot box, not restrict it. Congress should be considering H.R. 14, the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, to ensure that every American can freely and fairly vote. Mr. Speaker, this is very personal to me. I am not only the representative of America's Civil Rights District, but I am also the proud daughter of Selma, Alabama. It was in my hometown where hundreds of foot soldiers were bludgeoned on a bridge for the equal right of all Americans to vote. This legislation before us today makes a mockery of their legacy. I urge all of my colleagues to vote no on the SAVE Act. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Bean, to speak on the bill.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. One citizen, one vote. It's the pillar of our democracy. And, Mr. Speaker, you would think that of all the issues that we debate on this hallowed floor, this is the one. This is the one that brings everybody together. The pillar of our democracy, one citizen, one vote. Everybody's on the same team. Mr. Speaker, you would be wrong. It's amazing you would be wrong, because there are people in this room that think women are incapable of getting an ID. I think that's an insult to women. Mr. Speaker, let me remind you why we're here. We're here because this previous administration, the Biden administration, imported 10 to 15 million illegal aliens who have come here, and we have evidence that they're participating in our elections. The next thing you'll say is, did they get Social Security numbers? Mr. Speaker, they did. The Doge team just announced millions of illegals now have Social Security numbers. It's happening, and it ends today when we vote on this SAVE Act. Now, I've just heard my colleagues say it's already against the law. It's already against the law. We don't need this act. But let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, why it's already against the law for a minor to buy beer, but yet the clerk checks the ID before the purchase is made. We need the SAVE Act. We need security. We need to come together, and I will invite our colleagues to come together. There's still time to agree that the pillar of our democracy is one citizen, one vote. The right answer on the SAVE Act is a yes vote. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman's time. He yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin reserves his time. The gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman's comments leads me to the question. Do Republicans believe that every attestation under federal law is rife for subversion? Americans must attest under penalty of perjury that their tax returns contain correct information. Do Republicans want to end this honor system by requiring Americans to provide even more documentation to the Internal Revenue Service? It's a federal crime to lie on alcohol, tobacco, and firearms form 4473, the firearms transaction record. That form is filled out under the same honor system that governs voter registrations. Are you telling me that Republicans are open to strengthening gun licensing laws in the United States and no longer accept attestation? Each of us must submit records to the FEC, attesting under penalty of perjury that our campaign committee reports are accurate. Do Republicans now want to provide the American people greater transparency around political spending? Because if they do, I've got a bill they can support, the Freedom to Vote Act. I'd also just suggest to the gentleman, Representative Bean, that an estimated 170,000 women in his district have a different last name on their birth certificate than is on their current photo ID, and roughly 397,000 residents of Florida's 4th District do not have a passport. It would cost them $51.7 million to secure one. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman, my friend from New Jersey, Mr. Conaway.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong opposition to the SAVE Act. While everyday Americans are struggling from the fallout of Trump's disastrous tariff policies, Republicans are pushing through a bill that strips Americans' constitutional right to vote, a vote that was hard-won and for which many died. They claim the SAVE Act is intended to prevent undocumented immigrants from voting, but it's already illegal for them to vote, and it is extremely rare. In reality, the SAVE Act makes it harder for Americans, especially women and people of color, to participate in our elections. We've seen these tactics before, creating barriers to the ballot box to suppress the vote, and yet Republicans continue to find ways to undermine democracy. I urge my colleagues to take a hard look in the mirror and ask themselves, do you want to stand on the side of voter suppression, or do you want to stand on the side of democracy? I choose democracy and will vote no on this dangerous anti-American bill. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, we're hearing from the other side that it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote. That's true. It's also illegal to evade Border Patrol and cross the border illegally into the United States of America. But enforcement matters. And we can look at what happens when you don't enforce the law under the Biden administration, what happens when you enforce the law under the Trump administration. I think back about when I went home to my hometown in Janesville, Wisconsin the other day, and I went to buy a 6-pack of beer. I walked in, and the gentlewoman at the desk said, "Brian, good to see you." Went back, grabbed a 6-pack of beer, came up. She said, "Brian, I need to see your ID." Pulled out my ID and handed it to her. She reviewed it. She allowed me to purchase a 6-pack of beer. Am I the only one here that thinks it's absolutely absurd that we protect our beer more than we protect our ballots? This law allows us to make sure that only U.S. citizens are voting in U.S. elections. Mr. Speaker, it's about enforcement of the law. I would ask my colleagues across the aisle, how many non-citizen votes should be okay? The answer to me and my colleagues on this side of the aisle is 0. Because every non-citizen that votes in a federal election in the United States of America cancels out the vote of a U.S. citizen. As we know in this chamber, very often House races are close. One of our representatives in this chamber was elected by simply 6 votes. 1 non-citizen voting in a federal election in the United States is too many. And the arguments I'm hearing from my colleagues on the left is that they're okay with non-citizens voting. It's essential that not only do we have the law, we enforce the law. And the SAVE Act does just that. It's my good friend Chip Roy from the state of Texas, the author of the bill, who I've been working with to do just that. And I now yield my friend, the gentleman from Texas, Chip Roy, as much time as he may consume to speak on the bill.
The gentleman has provided the gentleman from Texas for as much time as he may consume. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank the Speaker. I want to thank the chairman for his strong work and commitment to election integrity and to working with us on this bill, in particular, the SAVE Act. He's done an extraordinary job, and I'm proud to work with him and work with the rest of my colleagues on it. I'm proud to work with my friend Cleta Mitchell, who had a significant hand in what we were doing here. I'm quite certain that she is pretty well aware of protecting the right of females to be able to vote, along with my friends Stephanie Bice and Mary Miller and Laurel Lee, and Lauren Boebert, and Kat Kamak, all of whom came down to the floor in full support of this legislation, because they know the truth. They know the truth that the American people know, which is that as much as my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to bring up the DMV, the American people know that the DMV is very good at giving driver's license to illegal aliens, because we know it to be true. We know that there are people who have been indicted for voting illegally. We know that there are voter rolls with massive numbers of people who are illegally present in the United States. We know that the previous administration let in millions of people into the United States, wrongfully and illegally under parole and asylum, blatantly abusing the law to put people in the United States that have no basis for being here, many of whom carried out dangerous acts against American people, killed American citizens, but importantly, have been registering to vote. That's what's been happening. So what we understand is the American people have spoken very clearly that they believe only American citizens should vote in American elections. There's nothing controversial about that. There's nothing controversial about saying that you should be able to ensure that only citizens vote. And let's be very clear. Federal law has currently been interpreted to prohibit states from being able to check citizenship. That's the truth. That's why the state of Arizona, for example, has two systems, one for state and local, one for federal.
When he speaks, the gentleman's continued to
The
recognize.
good people of Arizona have two systems in place. They check for citizenship for state and local elections, and they're unable to check for citizenship in federal elections. The point of this bill is to ensure that we guarantee only citizens vote by allowing those states to be able to check, by having systems, federal systems, be open to the states to be able to check, and to require proof of citizenship when you register. There's nothing complex about that. There's nothing more sacred under the Constitution than ensuring that the people are able to have the voice in the election of the people that represent them in Washington and throughout the country. Once that is undermined, then people lose faith in the very institutions upon which this is built. This legislation is designed to restore that faith, to save our elections, to save election integrity. I'm proud to have worked on this bill with my friend, the chairman, with my colleagues on this side of the aisle, and I would note that 5 of my Democrat colleagues joined us last summer to vote for this bill. Hardly a partisan exercise. Hardly a partisan exercise to say that we should protect the elections of the American people. So I urge my colleagues to support this bill, to restore confidence and faith in our elections, to take a step forward in ensuring that people know that citizens will be in control of this republic as the founders intended. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time.
I reserve.
Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves his time. Gentleman from New York.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a inquiry on time.
The gentleman from New York has 7 minutes remaining.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like now to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Alabama, my friend, Mr. Figures.
Distinguished gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, all of my colleagues today are speaking about this bill, and it's personal to me because I represent Alabama. I represent the birthplace of the Civil Rights Movement, and I would be remiss not to mention that election integrity was not an issue that my colleagues have been pushing until Donald Trump told them that they should be pushing this issue. Americans have confidence in elections. But see, for me, it's about too many people doing too many things too courageously for me to be able to stand here today. Names like James Reed and Jimmy Lee Jackson and Viola Liuzzo, Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, Michael Schwerner, These are people who died for me to be here today. Congressman John Lewis, who most of you served with, died for me to be here today. And this bill would make it tougher than it has ever been in American history to register to vote at a time where we have the technological ability to be able to verify election eligibility. But we don't want to do that. We want to make it tougher for people to actually get registered to vote. And that is not what we should be doing. We should be making it easier for people to vote. Easier.
Time has expired.
I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves his time. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, can I inquire the time remaining?
The gentleman has 3.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to my friend and colleague, the representative from California, Mr. Kiley, to speak.
The gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today as a co-sponsor of the SAVE Act to advance the radical proposition that only American citizens should vote in American elections. Now, of course, this isn't radical at all. It is common sense. I think the vast majority of Americans would be shocked to learn that it elicits any opposition at all. In many states in this country, foremost my own state of California, the administration of our elections is completely out of touch with the rest of the developed world, falling well short of the standards that ought to exist in a modern democratic society. This measure, requiring proof of citizenship in order to vote, is a needed corrective. I believe in my state it will complement other initiatives that we are advancing now to require voter ID and to have a timely vote counting process in order to restore public confidence in our election process. What is at stake is not only election integrity and election security, but democratic legitimacy, and ensuring that our people have the ability to express themselves fully and our own identity as a state and a country through the democratic process. I urge passage of this on a bipartisan basis.
Time has expired.
I reserve.
Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves his time. Gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentle lady from California, Ms. Friedman.
Gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
California.
California.
Thank you. Thank you, Ranking Member Morelli. I rise in strong opposition to the so-called SAVE Act, a bill that is a modern-day poll tax targeting American women and low-income Americans. This bill bans voter ID. It bans using driver's licenses as voter ID unless they're backed by additional proof of citizenship, a requirement that excludes nearly all driver's licenses and real IDs issued today. Now, for women who have changed their names, often through marriage, this means showing a passport or a birth certificate that may not match their legal name. That would have meant that my grandmother, who had long since lost her birth certificate, would have been ineligible to vote under this bill. In California alone, that would include more than 7 million women. Now, this would force those women to pay $130 just to get a passport they need to vote. With nearly a third of Californians lacking passports, this bill would cost them more than $1.25 billion statewide. If you have to pay to vote, that's called a poll tax, plain and simple. It is also unnecessary red tape for people just trying to cast a ballot. This is a bill in search of a problem. We have enough trouble getting American citizens to vote.
The gentleman reserves his time. Does the gentleman seek to reserve your time?
I reserve my time, Mr.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
The gentleman will reserve his time pending his, I believe, close. The gentleman's given that right. The gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield to my dear friend, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Latimer.
The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morelli. The American people in my district and in my state have spoken clearly. This bill is voter suppression, pure and simple. It's brought to us under the guise of stopping illegal voting. And when we analyzed voting in Westchester County, 1 million people that I was the county executive of, we found no appreciable illegal voting. But this is an opportunity for this majority to try to impose their will on the states that they don't already control. They want to end mail voter registration in my home state to satisfy other states' regressive laws. They want to require people who have voted legally for years to prove their citizenship if they not only change their name, but if they move. A simple move requires them to drive to a county board of elections and prove that they're an American citizen when they have proven that over the course of 20 years or more of voting. This bill subjects local officials to hefty criminal fines if they register someone outside of these rules. This is an expensive, unfunded mandate in Westchester, in New York City, and in all the other states that are involved. Mr. Speaker, I yield my time back. Thank you, Mr. Morelli.
Yields back his time. Gentleman from New York has 4 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Wisconsin has chosen to save his time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was remiss earlier. I do want to remind my colleague, Mr. Roy, an estimated 150,000 women in his district have a different name on their birth certificate than on their photo ID, and 336 residents of Texas's 21st district lack a passport, to a cost of $43.7 million to those who would need to get a passport should they choose that. Also, I'd like to remind my colleague, Representative Kiley, an estimated 135,000 women in his district have a different name, and roughly 268,000 residents of California's 3rd district do not have a passport. The cost to them for getting one, $34.8 million. And with that, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to my friend, the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Johnson.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in opposition to the Voters' Republican Suppression Act. I want to give Republicans one chance to actually fulfill the rhetoric that they are spouting to the American people, which is actually giving people the right to vote. I appreciate that I appreciate efforts to ensure that our elections are safe, free from foreign interference, and that only U.S. citizens can vote. However, one of my concerns with this bill is that, as it written, it does not allow for mail or online voter registration. This bill, let me be perfectly clear, requires hardworking American people, people who go to work at 8 in the morning, who don't get off till 5 p.m., to go in person to a voter registration office, to take off work, to go in person to register to vote. That is why I have offered an amendment to have online voter registration. There are millions of service members and their families serving our countries overseas, individuals with disabilities, seniors who are unable to vote in person. Why are we keeping these barriers for eligible citizens when the world is evolving around us? We live in modern times, and so many of our lives happen online, from daily activities. We can pay our bills, we can pay our taxes online. You can apply for college, you can apply for a car and home and everything else online. For this reason, at the appropriate time, I will offer a motion to recommit this bill back to committee. If the House rules permitted, I would have offered the motion with my common sense amendment to this bill. My amendment would ensure Americans could still register to vote and prove their citizenship, online or by in mail. This is a simple common sense amendment, and it would make certain that we can care for the people who can't get out of their homes, and that this Congress is not depriving any eligible citizen of their right to vote. Republicans have refused this amendment. Republicans are refusing your ability to go and make it easy for citizens to register to vote in this country. Republicans can now vote to pass this amendment. I ask unanimous consent to insert the record of this text to this amendment, and I hope my colleagues will join me, and I yield back.
Without objection, the gentlewoman yields. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
And I would reserve the balance of my time.
Well, the gentleman, it's my understanding the gentleman reserves the right to close, so the gentleman from New York would now be recognized for the time remaining.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The SAVE Act is, to put it nicely, the most severe voter suppression bill ever considered at the federal level. Coupled with President Trump's recent anti-voter election executive order, the SAVE Act would end the voter registration process for all Americans as they know it. Republicans have repeatedly failed to present any evidence that non-citizen voting at a federal level has ever affected the outcome of any election. The SAVE Act will make it harder for American citizens to vote, to make it harder for married women to vote, to make it harder for service members, students, rural Americans, senior citizens, native voters, survivors of natural disasters, and survivors of domestic abuse to vote, to make voting more expensive, in fact, to force American families to pay billions of dollars just to register to vote. Democrats want a country where every American citizen can vote. That's why we champion bills like the Freedom to Vote Act, the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and the Native American Voting Right Act, not the SAVE Act. I fiercely oppose this anti-American bill. I urge every one of my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats alike, to defeat this extremist anti-voter SAVE Act. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back time. The distinguished gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for his remaining 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The SAVE Act is clear. Only U.S. citizens should vote in U.S. elections. Let's summarize the arguments here. My colleagues on this side of the aisle believe that only U.S. citizens should vote in U.S. elections, and we should keep it that way. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle just moments ago said that there's no appreciable illegal voting. Well, how much illegal voting should be allowed in the United States of America? My opinion, no non-citizens should vote in U.S. elections. We can go down and look at the data. Illinois had to remove 600 non-citizens from their voter rolls. Pennsylvania had to remove 10,000 non-citizens from their voter rolls. Georgia, 1,600 non-citizens attempted to register. And in our nation's capital, where they allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections, this past November, 388 non-citizens voted here in our nation's capital municipal elections. You'll hear the argument from my colleagues across the aisle that it's already illegal to vote if you're a non-citizen in a federal election. Well, I'd tell them, as I said earlier, it's already illegal to evade Border Patrol and to come into this country. But Joe Biden was happy to not enforce the law. Millions of illegal immigrants have come into the United States of America. And the National Voter Registration Act is drafted by this body. If you broke it, you got to fix it. We got to fix the voting laws. The National Voter Registration Act requires states to give voter registration materials when an individual comes to get a driver's license. So in states that give driver's license to illegal aliens, like the state of Illinois, just to the south of my home state of Wisconsin, they're handed voter registration materials. Mr. Speaker, I view that as insane. We should be making sure that only U.S. citizens are voting in U.S. elections. You'll hear arguments about it's burdensome. Mr. Speaker, I think it's absurd that we're protecting beer more than we're protecting ballots. You have to show a photo ID when you go in to buy a six-pack of beer. You should have to go in and show that you're a U.S. citizen when you register to vote. It's just that simple. And I remind my colleagues that we had this debate in this chamber last Congress. 5 Democrats joined us in voting for this bill. Well, in a few moments, we'll be voting, Mr. Speaker. It'll be darn interesting to see how many Democrats have the courage to come across the line and say, yes, only U.S. citizens should vote in U.S. elections. My colleagues should support this bill, and I yield back.
All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 294, the previous question is ordered on the bill. The questions on the engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to amend the National Voter Registration Act of 1993 to require proof of United States citizenship to register an individual to vote in elections for federal office and for other purposes.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Ms. Johnson of Texas moves to recommit the bill H.R. 22 to the Committee on House Administration.
Pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 19, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. All those in favor shall say aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The motion is not agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Will resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order. The motion to concur in the Senate amendment to the House Concurrence Resolution 14 if ordered. The motion to recommit H.R. 22 and the passage of H.R. 22 if ordered. The first vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20. Remaining electronic votes will be conducted on 5-minute votes. Pursuant to Clause 1C of Rule 19, further consideration of House Concurrent Resolution 14 will now resume. The clerk will report the title.
House Concurrent Resolution 14, Concurrent Resolution establishing the congressional budget for the United States government for fiscal year 2025 and setting forth the appropriate budgetary levels for fiscal years 2026 through 2034, Senate Amendment.
The question is on the motion offered by the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Arrington. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to consider is.
I request the
Excuse
yeas
me,
and nays.
gentleman from Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested by the gentleman from Wisconsin. Those favoring a vote for the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
Along with voting. Does any member wish to change their vote? On this vote, the yeas are 216, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is a question on agreeing to the motion to recommit on H.R. 22 offered by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Johnson, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will redesignate the motion.
Motion to recommit H.R. 22 offered by Ms. Johnson of Texas.
Question is on the agreeing to the motion to recommit. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote. 1 minute. All members voted. Did anyone wish to change their vote? On this vote, the yeas are 211, the nays are 215. The motion is not adopted. Question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no.
Oh.
The ayes have it. The bill is passed.
Mr. Speaker,
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. The members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote. Does any member wish to change their vote? On this vote, the yeas are 220, the nays are 208. The bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Chair will remind all persons in the gallery they are here as guests of the House and that any manifestation of approval or disapproval of proceedings is in violation of the rules of the House. The chair lays before the House an enrolled resolution.
Figures no. Then what?
House Joint Resolution 24, resolution providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title V United States Code of the rules submitted by the Department of Energy relating to Energy Conservation Program, energy conservation standards for walk-in coolers and walk-in freezers.